Uncharted 1 was released on November 19th, 2007, by a little-known development company called Naughty Dog. Now, at the time, Naughty Dog had only made games such as Crash Bandicoot and Jak and Daxter. So when they began work on Uncharted Drake's Fortune, their first entry into the Uncharted series, this wasn't just their first Uncharted game, this was their first attempt at making a game like this, combining platforming and climbing mechanics with third-person cover shooter gameplay and a somewhat generic action movie plot and characters. And at the time, making something like this was uncharted territory for Naughty Dog. Like and subscribe. But seriously, making a game like this wasn't easy and still isn't to this day. At the time, nobody really had seen a game like Uncharted, and for many, it felt like something new and fresh. So, here we are, almost 16 years later, and since then, Uncharted has grown to be a global phenomenon, spawning 3 more game sequels, 4 if you want to count Golden Abyss, as well as a movie adaptation. So, going back to revisit Uncharted 1 after all these years, I found it to be pretty surprising. Surprising in the sense that despite all this time, and despite Naughty Dog having since learned a lot of lessons about making this type of game, Uncharted 1 still surprisingly holds up pretty well. Now look, I'm not gonna lie to you, this game is starting to show its age in many ways, and even though as of right now I haven't played Uncharted 2 or 3 yet, I can say that with certainty, those games improve on almost every aspect of Uncharted 1. Expect Uncharted 2 and 3 reviews coming soon, by the way. But still, regardless of the newer game's improvements, and regardless of how old this game is, playing through it again left me pleasantly surprised. And in this review, I'm going to be going over the many aspects of Uncharted 1 and explaining which parts hold up, which parts could use some work, and which parts are just straight up bad. And believe me, there are plenty of those in this game. So without any further delay, here is my review of Uncharted 1. I should say that even though this game is 16 years old as of right now, there's still going to be some people watching that haven't played it, so I should clarify, there will be some minor spoilers here, but I mean, come on, it's been 16 years, like this is on you at this point. Before I actually started playing Uncharted 1, I heard a lot of bad things about its gameplay, and specifically the combat. And now that I've played it, what do I think of the combat? Well, it's alright. It's not terrible. Definitely feels quite clunky. The cover system isn't very good at all. But still, this game features some decent third-person shooter combat. I mean, sure, compared to recent games, it gets blown out of the water, but what's here is still functional, and even fun a lot of the time. I played through this game on crushing difficulty, because I'm not a bitch, and there was definitely some parts that were pretty tricky, and I was able to get it through it relatively fine, with some, challenge here and there. If you plan on playing this game, I do recommend that you play it on at least normal difficulty, maybe hard, and if you really, really want a challenge, go for crushing. And while this game is quite old, and I played it on crushing, many parts didn't feel very unfair, besides the final boss. The final boss kinda sucked. That final boss is terrible, okay? Just terrible. On all difficulties, terrible. It generally felt manageable, at least in terms of design, though, I should say. And there are some parts that can and will mess you up, especially the cover system. Cover in this game can be quite buggy, and a lot of the times you'll take cover behind something that you didn't mean to take cover behind, or you'll take cover on the side of a wall instead of behind it, so you're still in view of the enemies, stuff like that. It can feel very disruptive at times, but I mean, dare I say, when this game is working at its best, and you aren't being messed up by the cover or other stupid reasons, it's actually pretty damn fun. Maybe I just haven't played a third-person shooter in a long time, and maybe I'll have a change of view on this game's combat once I get to Uncharted 2 and 3. But, I mean, I did somewhat enjoy the combat in this game, even though a lot of people say it kinda sucks. And that is amplified by the weapon and enemy variety. As I was getting towards the later stages of Uncharted 1, I was shocked by how many new enemies and weapons I was still running into and finding, even in the last hour of the game. This helped keep combat and gameplay feel constantly fresh throughout the game. At the start of the game, you'll just be fighting normal goons, but the longer you go on, you'll encounter some guys wearing bulletproof vests, then helmets, and towards the very end of the game, zombies. Yes, zombies. I'm sure this came as a shock to many people playing Uncharted 1 back in the day, for the first time, especially as their first entry into the Uncharted series, because it doesn't act like it doesn't really seem like the type of game that features the supernatural. But yes, at the end, this game goes all out, and featuring these zombie-like creatures that you get to fight was really cool, I should say. There is an explanation in-game for why these creatures are zombies, and it definitely might slightly change your perception on what Uncharted really is. I mean, of course we're dealing with the supernatural. The whole point of the game is you're trying to find El Dorado. But even still, seeing creatures like this might be a step too far for some, but not for me. I did enjoy this little twist, and it felt good to still have variety in the gameplay this late. Also, something that I think is worth mentioning is that Nathan moves extremely slow in this game. As of writing, I haven't played Uncharted 2 or 3, like I said, so I'm not sure if this has changed in those games, but here in Uncharted 1, there's no sprint or run button, there's only walking, which happens during specific sections of the game. Or, like, if you push, really gently on the analog stick, Nathan will start walking. And then there's also, like, a light jog that Nathan does. It kinda sucks and makes the game feel quite slow and brings combat to a halt anytime you want to move in and out of cover. Nathan is, like, out here getting shot by 50 guys, and he's moving like he just sprained his ankle. It's a little annoying. But besides the combat, weapon variety, and enemy variety, there's the climbing and environments. Now, I think that most people can probably agree that the worst part about any Uncharted game is the climbing. I mean, even with Uncharted 4, which is largely considered the best in the series, I challenge you to find me just one person, that thinks the best part of Uncharted 4 is the climbing. I don't think that person exists. So, you have an aspect of these games that is mostly overlooked and seen as the weakest aspect, the climbing, and Uncharted 1 probably has the worst climbing in the series, so it's like twice as bad. This is the one part of the game that is really starting to show its age. Climbing from ledge to ledge feels so imprecise, and Nathan is constantly grabbing like bars and ledges that you don't want him to grab. Momentum also feels non-existent. Nathan is constantly making jumps and swinging off bars and ledges that he probably shouldn't be able to do. I mean, I know this might sound like small nitpicks, but you really start to notice it when you're playing. There's also a certain, like, language to the levels in this game that becomes apparent as you continue to play through Uncharted 1, and any Uncharted for that matter. You'll begin to notice which ledges are and aren't climbable, and the order that you need to climb objects in order to reach your next destination. While this is good for communicating to the player what they need to do next, a lot of the times this becomes one of the most immersion-breaking parts of the experience, because you almost get to know the level design too well. Like, there are ledges that are specifically placed in areas, and you can't help but think, this was only placed here so Nathan can progress through the level, instead of feeling like it's a natural placement for that ledge or handhold. Look at this scene for instance. Nathan is parkouring on some rocks by a waterfall, when suddenly a car drives up on a bridge just above Nathan. And when you shoot this specifically placed red barrel at the back of the Jeep, it falls off and then lands in this very specific spot so that Nathan can jump on it and continue through the level. Is it nitpicking? Yes, but it's also immersion breaking, and it isn't the only instance of this happening. I know the game is getting quite old by now, but even still, I feel as though there could have been more of an effort put forward towards making the player feel more immersed while playing, rather than just feeling like you're actually playing a video game. However, as for the environments, some actually look really great, even for the time. The Nazi bunker and the U-boat that you get to explore were quite creepy and really nailed the tone. The church and the forest also both looked great. I should say, however, that one of the biggest flaws of this game is that it only takes place in one location. From the little that I do know about the other Uncharted games, you are constantly moving to and from different locations and even different countries. But here, it takes place all on one island, which causes some of the levels to have some reused locations. This wasn't awful, as it was kind of cool to return to previous locations, but with new context. And this game even kind of adopts the FromSoft level design at times, where, you know, there's the whole interconnected levels. Sometimes I'd be exploring and I would end up in a building that I've been before, but this time I'm on a balcony overlooking that same building that I didn't know existed before. So while you are going back to the same locations, there's always something new there, which was cool. But I still think this is one of the biggest flaws of the game because it really neuters the whole adventure feeling that you get from the other Uncharted games, where it really feels like you're undertaking a large journey and like task, going to all these different places to discover, you know, this grand mystery. Here it's kind of just like one island, one location. It feels like everything is like so close by, so like near to you, that it doesn't really feel like I'm, you know, like on a grand adventure. I don't know. I do definitely think that the other Uncharted games improve on this drastically, because there's so many different locations you're going to, new countries, new places, new scenery. It feels like you're actually like a treasure hunter, instead of here where it's just kind of like you're on one location the whole time. So yeah, that's a pretty big flaw with the game, if you ask me. But lastly, let's get to the best part of not only Uncharted 1, but probably the Uncharted series as a whole: the characters. Nathan, Sully, and Elena is one of the best video game trios ever, and their chemistry is simply unmatched. While the three of them all fit some of the generic action movie tropes, this doesn't stop them from being amazing and working so well together. And this is all lifted up strongly by the dialogue. The dialogue, for the most part, is really well written and genuinely funny. Sure, there are times where the dialogue, you know, some lines feel a bit out of place, or maybe a little over-exaggerated, but this doesn't stop from the dialogue overall being great. However, I'd say the biggest flaw with the dialogue is sometimes characters will react extremely inappropriately to situations. For example, early on in the game, Sully takes a bullet to the chest, and only until about halfway through the game, he's presumed to be dead, like just straight up dead. And just a few minutes after Sully, one of Nate's longtime friends, is shot, he's cracking jokes and one-liners every few minutes. I mean, you, watching this video right now, stop for a second and think to yourself how you would react upon finding a lost Nazi bunker with zombies in it. Seriously, stop and think about your reaction to that. Got it? Well, here's good old Nathan Drake's reaction to that.
Oh, this is turning out to be a really lousy day.
Now, I understand that the game needs to be lighthearted and can't be too dark or gritty, but come on, this is pushing it. Yes, the dialogue was entertaining and mostly well written, but there are definitely times where the game is kind of pulling you out of it because it strays a little too far in one direction. That direction being lighthearted and comedic. I'm not saying Uncharted needs to be dark and serious, that's why Naughty Dog also made The Last of Us. But what I am saying is that there are times where it could have shown some restraint, and it simply just doesn't here in Uncharted 1. First, the situation with Sully getting shot and Nathan just cracking jokes like it's Comedy Central, and Nathan just seemingly brushing off the existence of zombies and a Nazi bunker that he just stumbled upon. It definitely pulls you out of it a little bit here and there. Another issue that I have with the characters are the villains. Now, for the most part, I don't know a lot about the other games' plots and characters, but I do know some of the villains. And Uncharted 1 has 3 villains, right? One is named Gabriel Roman, one is named Navarro, and one is named Eddie Raja, right? So out of those 3 villains, I only think one is good, Eddie Raja. Eddie Raja is pretty funny. He has some really good moments with Nate, a bit of back and forth, you know, but he's written pretty well. He has some very funny lines. He's overall a pretty cool character. Gabriel Roman is some old guy who was like the brains of the operation. He's like the main leader. Now, surprisingly, I actually thought that he was the main villain of the game, and he kind of is, until he's not. The main villain of this game is Navarro, this guy. This guy says, I think, maybe 3 or 4 lines in the whole game. I think. I don't remember any lines from him. I don't remember any moments. He has maybe 5 minutes of screen time, and he's the main villain. Why? Just why? Gabriel Roman has a lot more screen time, more lines. He's more of an imposing figure because Navarro is just like some background henchman guy. Gabriel Roman is actually like the leader of the operation. He's like the main antagonist to Nathan. And yet he's killed off because Navarro tricks him into opening El Dorado. It's stupid. He should have been the final boss, I think, but whatever. But the real cardinal sin that this game commits regarding its villains is killing off Eddie Raja. Eddie Raja, I think, has the most screen time out of the three. Definitely the most memorable lines. The most, like, just overall, like, he has the strongest presence. He's funny. He's just a really, like, entertaining character. And he just dies somewhat early, not early on, but, like, definitely before the game, like, reaches its climax. He just dies, which I think is a huge missed opportunity. I think he could have been a better main villain, or at least, like, a more prominent side villain, because, yeah, I really don't think that they should have killed him off. That was not a good decision. Navarro being the main villain was also ridiculous. I don't remember a single thing this guy says. Like seriously, I forgot. If I didn't look up their names, I'd probably forget, because they're just so forgettable. So, yeah, I think this game's villains could have definitely used some work, so I hope that that's improved in Uncharted 2, 3, and 4. So, wrapping up, Uncharted 1 feels pretty damn old at times, and yet at other times feels like it holds up pretty well. Some aspects of it could have used some work, particularly the climbing, the cover system, some of the characters. However, other aspects of it are, like, so good that I'm surprised Naughty Dog nailed them on their very first attempt and their very first entry into the series. It's definitely not a bad game. Is it great? No, far from it. However, I think a lot of its flaws are owed to its age and overall jankiness. But I think, considering the time it came out in, the fact that this was Naughty Dog's first attempt at making a game like this, and the fact that, despite all its flaws, it was able to spawn an extremely successful franchise, I think that Uncharted 1 is owed some respect, regardless of its many issues. And I think that if you are looking to get into the Uncharted series like I am, but are afraid that the first game might not be worth playing because of how old or janky it may be, let me be the first to tell you that it is, in fact, worth playing through and experiencing, even though it may be a little rough around the edges. Uncharted 1 is old, but it does hold up in some areas, and I think it's owed a lot of respect.